Dad, you're celebrating 6 decades of faithful
Geez, that
ministry.
sounds like a long
It
time.
is a long time. It's incredible on so many levels, and we're going to get into that. But I have some personal questions, questions that come from my sisters, and a few that just came on from social media that people want to know. Some more serious, some less so. But let's dive in. So these are all over the map, all sorts of questions.
Well, my
In,
answers would be some serious and some all over the place.
fair enough. So you'll be able to read the room, which is good with me. So here's first one. Who was the most encouraging non-family member that supported you as you grew in your faith and in your ability to be a dad and or husband?
Probably a pastor of one of the first churches I went to, Faye Logan.
Hmm.
Um, he was probably the first person that really believed in me, and and he motivated me like almost no one ever has.
Hmm.
He'd never been to college, anything. Very simple man, but very wise.
Hmm.
Yeah, Faye
Faye,
Logan.
Faye Logan. So you're probably in your 20s at this point. That was the first time somebody ever really,
Early 20s.
that was the first time someone believed in you as a Christian or as a person the first time.
I'd say as a person.
Wow. Okay. All right. Shifting to ministry, you've had kind of eras of ministry. So the question is, which era of ministry did you most enjoy? Whether it was debating and speaking, the free kind of speech era, whether it was traveling with the rock band Petra or Rebecca
Jeez.
St. James and the Newsboys, whether it's the work you did in Russia and Cuba. If you had to pick, I know your answer is I loved them all, but if I said you could go back and relive one of these seasons, which one would it be?
Russia and Cuba.
Really?
Yeah, because of the impact and the influence on two countries.
I thought you were going to say the free speech because you tell me how much that you love that and
Oh, I
energize that, and you
did.
speak about that with such energy and
Uh,
passion. But that season, really,
yeah, free
okay.
speech is one of the greatest eras ever.
Hmm.
But I would take Russia and Cuba
Hmm.
because the impact we had, is affecting an entire nation.
Hmm. Okay, that's a great answer. So when you look back on your life in terms of ministry, instead of kind of an era, pick a moment that was just one of the most special moments. Maybe it's a speech you gave, maybe a debate, maybe an award, maybe an individual who came to Christ, maybe a book. Like if you had to pick just a moment that was just amazing, what would you pick?
It was probably in Georgia. Um, Jimmy, what was his name?
Jimmy.
Oh gosh, I can't remember. Governor of Georgia, you know, and he was kind of using me as a prop. So he was doing all the speaking. I was on the side, and the crowd started to chant, "We want McDowell. We want McDowell." And it got so loud, he finally just gave up and he said, "Okay, come on," and gave me the whole platform.
Oh my
So that
goodness.
was probably one of the most unique times.
I've never heard you even share that
Yeah.
before. That, that was awesome. That's very cool. Okay. What is the key on a more personal level? You've had a lot of people going back to the sex abuse that you talked about, an alcoholic father. What is the key to forgiving people? Is it once? Do you have to go back and keep forgiving people? How have you been able to live your life without bitterness and that hurt overcoming you and actually forgiving people? What does that take?
Probably the thing that helped me most realizing that if God has totally forgiven me because of what Christ did on the cross, then why can't I forgive others for what Christ did on the cross?
Hmm.
And that was probably my greatest motivation. It's pretty hard to forgive people you don't like. There's no one I hate. There's sure a lot of people I don't like.
Fair enough. Is
I
that
would
because
I wouldn't want to spend an hour in a boat fishing with them.
we're commanded to love people but not necessarily like them? Is that what
That's
a
right.
distinction you would make? Okay, all right, fair enough.
To like people is an emotion. To love someone is a choice.
Okay, fair enough. Who would you say, and you could go back to elementary school, high school, college, at Talbot, who first comes to your mind as the most influential teacher that you had, and why?
I'd say Dr. Robert Sosi,
Hmm.
because we became close friends. I think we became close friends. We went to Laker games together, everything.
Hmm.
And he'd invite me over to his house all the time for meals and everything. Um, and so he had a profound impact uh, in my life through his friendship and his marriage, his relationship with his kids, and all. Uh, he was the first really positive role model I probably had,
Wow.
Sosi. And he was always open. His office was always open to me. Uh, and I remember I went in once, we did this major paper, and he wasn't in there yet. So here they were all stacked up. So I went and found mine, pulled it out. Oh my gosh, every page, marks, question mark, all over it. And I thought, oh no. So he came in and he sat there and he said, you know, Josh, your paper's probably one of the best papers we ever received. And I thought, oh, you gotta be kidding. He's probably setting me up for the kill. And so I pulled a paper out. I said, what about all these red marks? He said, you think there's something? He pulled paper after paper, pages. I had no page marked out. I mean, some papers had 15 pages X'd out,
Oh my
everything.
goodness.
And that's when I thought, yeah, I got through it.
Well, I went to Talbot, I don't know, maybe four decades after you did, and I had SOCI for 2 classes. And that was pretty special to have the same professor. So I can see why he was so significant to
He
you.
probably felt the same way
Well, that's awesome.
because of the relationship I had with him.
This one's a little bit more personal, but something I've wondered and wanted to ask you. I remember, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe 15 years ago, you sat, obviously, Mom was there, and me, Kelly, Katie, and Heather. And it was a sober time, and you said you had something really important to tell us. I thought you were going to tell us that you
Mom
were.
and I were divorcing or
No,
something.
I had no fear about that. I thought you were going to tell me you had some kind of cancer and were dying. That's what I thought. So when what you told me, I was sadly, or maybe I shouldn't frame it this way. I was somewhat relieved, like, okay, we can deal with that. But it was the seriousness of sexual abuse. It's not what I thought you were going to tell us. I'm curious now. I know, going all the way back to the pastor you mentioned, Faye Logan, you had shared with him and he counseled you. It wasn't for a matter of suppressing it and not dealing with it. But why did you choose to share it then? What was it about 15 years ago? Do you remember why you felt like, because this was long before the Me Too movement, nobody was talking about it culturally speaking. Why then?
One, because nobody was talking about it. But in my conversations and experiences, so many people, I could not believe how many people had suffered sex abuse.
Hmm.
And I felt to sit there and have been abused and found the answer and really, in so many ways, got free from it, that I was sinning if I didn't share it.
Oh, so is it really a matter of obedience for you?
Yeah.
So in some sense,
But I got criticized for it.
a lot of criticism, a little criticism, like what?
Significant criticism. I remember this one leader and crew, a woman, she came up to me and says, you just take yourself too seriously, and walked away.
Wow.
Crushed me. Yeah.
Says to the man wearing a Superman shirt.
I
You
probably didn't
take
have a
yourself too
Superman shirt on
seriously.
then.
Well, you've
Yeah.
been dressing like that for a long time. Going back, would you have done it differently, or would you have talked about it earlier or later, or was that probably the right time?
I probably would have done it the same. I think it was the right time.
Hmm.
You never share a defeat until you've had a victory. And so I had to have victory over it before I could share it with people. And then to be able to share positive answers out of experience.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Fair enough. This came from Katie. And
Let me brace myself.
no, you need to. Get a little bit emotional thinking about it, but here's how she worded it. She said, lately I've been thinking about how Dad hardly had a single happy memory as a child. Yeah, he literally created the opposite for all four of us. Does he realize that? How does he feel about that?
I feel great about it. I feel thankful and humbled. But my whole motivation, I didn't want you kids to go through what I went through.
Hmm.
I wouldn't want anyone to go through it. And I don't feel sorry for myself. I'm glad I went through it because God used it to make me who I am, and I like who I am. I know as a Christian, you're not supposed to like yourself, but I like myself. I like the way I treat people. I like the way I do things. I like the way I work. I like my work ethic. But I forgot the question now.
I think it was just, have you pondered and thought about how radical it is to have no or almost no good childhood memories to having 4 kids who wouldn't trade their family experience for anything?
I think it's supernatural. Only the
Hmm.
Holy Spirit can produce that. But I was so driven by, I did not want if my kids had to go through what I went through, then I wouldn't have kids.
Hmm.
I wouldn't want anyone to go through what I went through. But I'm glad I went through it.
Well, there's a lot of people who didn't go through what you went through, but wouldn't describe their childhood as happy and amazing as we did. So I think Katie just wanted to make sure that sunk in for you. So, all right. So this came from social media. How have you kept your faith during hard times, whether it's hard economic times, relational times, emotional times, health times? How have you kept your faith for so long amidst difficult times?
I would say probably the number one thing is I not only believe, I know why I believe.
Hmm.
And if you don't know, why do you believe? How do you know it's true? Why do you believe it's true? Then you're going to be sidelined all along the way. Problems come up, challenges by people will threaten your very core.
Hmm.
And so I'm glad that I God gave me the kind of mind that I've got to have answers.
Hmm.
And so I didn't take somebody's comment as true. I had to check it out myself. And I recommend that for anyone. What will carry you through hard times are not your beliefs, it's your convictions.
Hmm.
A conviction, a belief is knowing what you believe. A conviction is knowing what you believe, why you believe it, and experiencing it in your life.
Hmm.
If you don't experience it in your life, then it's not a conviction.
And that's when a lot of your convictions, when you experienced the ability to forgive my grandfather, your dad, isn't that really when the belief went to conviction, when you saw that life change?
I think it became a conviction when I had the courage to tell him that I loved him.
Hmm. Hmm.
I can't imagine what he was going through at that
Hmm.
time because I remember he said to me once, I don't know how any child could love a father like me. And I said, I agree with you.
Sorry. What do you think your dad would say if he could see you now?
What's that?
What do you think your dad would say if he could see you now?
So it depended if he was drunk, drinking, or sober.
But he stopped drinking when he became a believer.
Yeah. I've always thought that he would be proud of what I turned out to do and who I am as a person. I hope he would be.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
When I get
I
to
know
heaven,
he
I'll
would
ask
be.
him.
Nah, he would be. This came also from social media. How do you maintain a relationship with God amidst ministry demands, just busyness and stresses and all that entails?
Oh gosh, there's so many answers to that. Repeat that.
Amidst the busyness and stresses of ministry, how do you maintain a relationship with God?
Well, ministry is not my primary purpose in life. My primary purpose in life is to know Him and to live it out in my life. And so if that's your primary purpose, and that would be your focus even during hard times, criticism, everything. If you don't have that and you're just focusing on ministry, I think it'd be pretty tough. Very tough.
So it's about priorities and perspective.
Where's your focus?
So ministry demands come, though, and they're important and they're urgent. How do you not let them cloud out that focus on knowing God, like you said?
Sometimes they do. I think I have to be honest. Comes back when you ask yourself, well, why am I doing this?
Okay.
What purposes are in it? Is this part of me? Is this really who I am?
Okay. I've seen you talk a lot about principles, and when you have principles, they can guide your practice. When you have strong principles of spending time in God's Word, prayer, family, when those demands come, they're not going to squeeze out the things that you know are most important.
I think life, fulfilled, happy, successful, meaningful life has to be one that's lived by principles. Otherwise, you come and go. You're up one day, down the next day. Principles keep you just gradually growing. And you might take a dip down or take a rise up, but you keep going.
Okay. This also came from social media. One more for you. Did you ever have serious doubts? And if so, how did you address them? From becoming a believer 60 plus years ago, did you ever have serious doubts where you questioned your faith, thought about abandoning it?
I don't know if you'd call him serious, but I sure had doubts. I remember one day, out of nowhere, I just shook my head. How in the world can anyone believe in the resurrection? And it really caused me to question it, which I like, because when I question it, then I demanded that I get the answers. And so I probably spent more time studying the resurrection than I ever spent studying anything. And I've written a book on it, did a lot of talks on it, series on it. And it's probably what led to my deep convictions, is that I truly believe that third day the tomb was empty and Christ was raised from the dead.
That's great. So it makes you go back and look at the evidence even further. Was there any coming to Jesus moment of somebody else? Either somebody you had a chance to personally lead to Christ, a story that you heard, a testimony of somebody that relayed to you, that just stands out as one of the neatest, most memorable, powerful stories. It could be personal or it could be somebody in the abstract that is just a memorable story of somebody coming to Christ.
I'd have to think on that one.
You weren't thinking on the other ones? I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
Not as much. Oh.
We could come back to it.
It had something to do with Madame Mary O'Hare.
Former atheist. I don't know the end of her story.
Something. Who went to Russia with me. I can't think of anybody now.
That was like the 90s, so fair enough. We'll track that one down.
Ago?
It was, yeah. I was in college. Okay, no worries. If you think of one, we can come back to that. Outside of the Bible, what book or books had the biggest impact on your life?
Oh gosh.
Maybe Cloud.
I would say, got to say, Dr. something Montgomery's book.
Montgomery?
Yeah, Warwick Montgomery.
Okay.
His book on Christ. what was it called?
That would have been really early.
Yeah.
John Warwick Montgomery.
Yeah.
He was one of your
It
professors.
it it had a profound impact on me.
Okay. Would you put Boundaries in that category by Henry
Probably had a
Cloud, or
profound
maybe?
impact on me because John Warren Montgomery was one of the smartest people I ever met in my life.
He's brilliant.
And he had such convictions about Christ, the resurrection, the Bible, that even if I didn't think there was any evidence, I probably believed it was true because he did.
Fair enough.
I mean, it was kind of like that.
Would you put Boundaries by Henry Cloud in that category of just being really influential in your life?
Oh yeah, you can't match Henry Cloud. Yeah, his book on Boundaries, was it Boundaries?
Boundaries, yeah.
Oh, if I hadn't read that book, my life would have probably been like this, like a roller coaster, or I call them rally coasters. But his book really caused me to think and caused me to place boundaries in my life. And without boundaries, I don't know how you can be genuinely happy. I just don't. Yeah.
Boundaries with time, boundaries with energy. Okay, interesting.
What was the name of his book?
It's just called Boundaries.
Boundaries?
Yeah, and then you did boundaries in dating and boundaries for kids and other
And
stuff
it was
like
neat.
that.
And then when I got to know Henry, he was the same as his book, which was kind of neat. He wasn't one person's book way over here, but they matched up to his life.
Well, I just met a former Muslim who said you didn't match up, meaning he read your book and was expecting this like scholar to be staunch and wear a shirt and tie. And he goes, "Your dad showed up with a Superman belt and didn't take himself too seriously." He was telling me that this past week. I think he meant it as a compliment, just so you know. So. I've always told people you're the same on stage as off stage. That's for sure. It doesn't change. Can you think of anything in ministry that you launched or tried to launch that didn't take off? And how do you feel about it?
There was something, but what was it? It's probably so bad I can't remember it.
You know, one of my sisters asked this question. I remember you had a big early internet project. It was like the global internet apologetics early. We were raising funds and it just didn't take off for some reason. I don't remember why.
I can't grasp it. It's there.
That was probably 25 years ago when it was fresh.
I can't recall it.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty good record. You've had pretty good success. Fair enough. Do you have a favorite family trip?
My problem is I have a photographic mind but no film.
No film. You have to explain that to anybody under 30. Just kidding. Do you have a favorite family trip?
No digital card.
There you go. A favorite family trip or experience with our immediate family. Somewhere we went to, something we experienced together. One or two. Doesn't have to be one, but a couple that just come to mind.
My favorite was went to Europe. Spent a lot of time in Switzerland, northern Italy, went down through Italy. It was probably the highlight. Come on, Switzerland is so beautiful. Oh my gosh.
It is beautiful.
Almost as pretty as some parts in the United States.
Almost, yeah. Okay. All right. What was one of your favorite times with Mom?
Oh gosh.
A trip or experience that you most treasure? Give us maybe a glimpse of some special time with Mom. Maybe a trip you did, or
how'd you come up with all these questions?
This one came from one of my sisters.
When was it, honey?
If you can't see, my mom is right here off. You maybe heard her laugh once before. Anything, Mom, you want to throw some ideas in there that might help?
It's just so many. It's just hard to nail it down to one.
Okay, and it's been...
Nail one.
It's been 52 years.
52 years.
Yeah, 52 and a half years.
And a half years.
Yeah.
So you've done trips together. There's not just one that stands out above it all, which is fine. It doesn't have to be. But...
Gosh, there's so many great ones.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. What, if you're going to distill it down, what do you love and appreciate most about Mom? You better have an answer for this one.
Yeah. her unconditional love and integrity and honesty.
Hmm.
There's no woman on the face of the earth I come close to respecting as much as Dottie.
Hmm.
I've never met a woman that even comes close to her. And I met some pretty great women in life.
Hmm.
Yeah. She's special.
She is special. Your grandson said recently, or no, your granddaughter was like, she said, Papa, you did well, man. Good job. All right. Was there a favorite place you lived? So before I was born, San Bernardino. Then we moved to Texas. And then to Julian for, I don't know, 12, 15 years. And then you moved back to Texas. And then here to Dana Point.
Probably was in, of all places, San Bernardino.
Really?
Because it was the first house we owned.
Mm.
We owned. And it was old, great condition, had all these beams through the house and everything, had the tiles on the roof that were all hand done. And one end of the tile was bigger than the other end, so they'd fit into each other. And they did that by forming them over their leg. And near the knee was narrower than towards the hip. And so when they formed them over their knees or their legs, they would come out bigger at one end than the other, and they'd fit right into each other.
How interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, I've never seen that house, never even driven by it. If
Oh,
it's still there.
It's still there.
That makes sense. It's just in terms of the first place you own, just starting a family.
But I'll never forget, we had these two great big expensive wire baskets of flowers. Had two of them hanging there. Came home once and somebody had stolen them.
Oh no.
Everywhere I drove for a year, I kept looking.
You were looking for
somebody
them.
hanging
Oh
those flowers.
gosh.
If they'd I don't know what I would have done if they had them.
All right, handful more for you. Was there something you always wanted in your home as a child that you now have in your home or had in your home?
Wow.
Like, for example, I know you always talked about the reason you love watches so much is a really interesting story behind that. In fact, tell us the watch story. Some people don't know why you have so many just amazing, remarkable watches.
Why do I?
Well, didn't you won an award or something to your kid and they didn't give it to you, if I remember?
Yeah. I was in the second grade or third grade, and they had this contest, and I won it hands down, big time. And so I had a number of gifts that came with it, but the one I wanted was this beautiful watch that motivated me, everything. And I'll never forget, I won't name her name. She picked up the watch. She says, I know you have so many things that it'd be right for us to give this to somebody else. Oh, I was so mad. Oh, golly.
In second and third grade.
Yeah. And it really hurt. And for many years, I couldn't trust authority because of that.
Wow.
It caused me to question authority. Yeah.
Wow,
But she had the audacity to do that.
That's pretty messed up. That's powerful. It had such an impact on your life. Now you got a lot of cool,
come on,
super
you're
nice
in second,
watches.
third grade. Here's this incredible watch,
I know.
and you just won it, and everybody in the class wanted it, and well, one of them got it.
Wow. So can you think of anything you wanted in your home growing up that you have now, or not?
If I did want it, it would be in my home.
Okay. Fair enough. That came from Heather. I wasn't sure how you were going to answer that. I can tell you one thing I had in my home that I didn't want now, which was antiques. We had so many antiques in the home. I was like, one thing I will not have in my home is antiques.
Yeah, but my problem is you go out to sell your furniture, you get 50% on the dollar. I go out and sell my furniture, I'll get 200% on the dollar.
Fair enough. Business-wise, you win, but I didn't want antiques in my home. So, although having a covered wagon bed was pretty cool. All right. This is a serious question. How did you manage to have me as clearly your favorite child while having the girls at least not fully realize it?
Well, it's not your looks. It's not your character. It's probably your gender.
All right.
Which, uh, it'd be hard to even joke around and answer that because you got three of the most incredible sisters in the world. They match you in everything.
I was curious how you'd answer that, Dad. I've seen
Yeah.
few people on the spot give good responses, and I don't think you saw that one
So
coming.
you didn't think that was a good response?
No, I didn't say.
Okay.
I didn't say that. I think honestly, I think all of us feel like we were the most special, which is a pretty remarkable thing to pull off. But just had to ask it that way for fun. All right, I do have three more for you. What's your hope for your grandchildren for the next 50 years?
Probably the greatest hope is that two things. Physically, they'll have great health. Spiritually, they'll have a deep understanding of Christ and a reality of Him in their lives. No.
That's great. Mic drop. All right. What do you hope your children remember most about you?
I hope they remember my old age. They should support me. Okay, what? Come again.
What do you hope? This was from Heather. She said, "What do you hope your kids remember most about you?"
Three things. He was a good husband, a good father, and a good believer. What more could you ask?
That's great. Finally, it relates to that. How do you hope people would, what do you hope people would most remember about you?
He loved his wife and spent time with his children.
It's a good mic drop moment. We can end there.
Yeah.
Good answers, Dad. That was really fun. Super proud of you. 60 years. Amazing.
Jeez, I feel old now.
I know. Thanks for carving out the time and,
Well, I'm
and coming
84.
over. 84, huh?
I never knew 84 would feel like 45, but I can't remember what 45 felt like. I knocked myself out trying to remember what did 45 feel like.
All right, I do have one more question for you then. How do you keep a sense of humor through just the pain and difficulty of life? Is that a choice? Where does that come from?
I don't look at life so much as pain and difficulty. I look at it as exciting, fulfilling, sensational, meaningful. I think life is incredible. And yeah, there's a lot of bumps along the way, but heavens, when you got a good life, you can handle the bumps.
So were you wired that way? Were you a funny kid, or you just made a choice to?
Jeez, I don't know. I had a lot of great times when I was a kid. I think I got some good memories of things, but most of the time they're overridden by the hurts, especially my father. We were walking out to the barn once. I was about 11, 12 years old. I could tell you where my feet were, where I was standing, exactly that same place at the corner of the shed. My dad just stopped, and out of nowhere, he'd been drinking something. If he was sober, he never would have said this. And he just stopped, turned around, and he said, "You know, you're worthless. You were a mistake. The only thing you're good for is working the fields." And that shattered me. That affected me for years. on that. That's why I was always so, so careful what I ever said to you kids, especially if I was upset or not mad, but I was upset or disappointed about something. I wanted to be so careful what words you use, because words mold lives.
They do. Well, you use your words well and carefully and wisely.
Most
So
of the time.
is
Most of the time.
well, yeah, I mean as a whole, sure. Does that just come from a joy of the Lord, just your sense of humor and willingness to not take yourself so seriously?
I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. I just want to be myself. I think one of the worst things in life is a hypocrite. I really do. I've known a lot of hypocrites in my life, and I don't have respect for any of them.
How significant was, as you look back into ministry, the debate with Ahmad Deedat? Where would you place that among ministry things that you did?
Probably number one.
Oh.
There were two people that I call pure embodiment of evil. Deedat was one of them. The other was a Christian businessman in Dallas who embodied evil. And when I went into that debate, I have to admit I was scared. So much was weighing on it. People from all over the world came. Oh my gosh. Probably people there from half the countries of the world. Muslim leaders came there in all their dress and pomp and everything else. And I knew a lot weighed on it. But my philosophy in debating is love your opponent while you destroy him. So I loved him while I destroyed him. And in fact, when it was over, he came over and said, if you ever come back to South Africa, I'll have you killed. And he turned around and walked out.
You never saw him again?
No, but I went by South Africa just to see. It was the first time was kind of exciting. I got on the plane, almost walked back on it. Got off of me and almost went back on it to fly out. But yeah, he was the embodiment of evil.
How did you prep for that?
Boy. There was a lawyer. What was his name?
John Gilchrist. Is that who it was? Or Anderson?
Anderson. And he took probably an entire week and prepped me in just about everything I would ever face in that debate. Helped me solidify the answers and everything. So when I went in that debate, I was more prepared than anything I'd ever prepared for in life.
You prepped for a year, and then you spent a week with one of the leading scholars on Islam. That's how that week fit in.
Yeah.
But were you studying just kind of day and night, reading everything you possibly
everything
could?
I can. Were we married then, honey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dottie could probably testify to that.
You studied for a year.
I remember you saying something like you got a call over there that I was dead or something like that. It was a misplaced call years ago. You told me that. Do you remember that, Mom? In like the 80s, there was something. I don't think it was somebody faking. They just had false information. That was.
I don't recall that.
I remember hearing that.
That'd
I
be
can't
rather
confirm
dramatic.
that.
I do remember that.
But you had a meal with him the day before, right? Do you remember anything about that? I know it's been decades. Yeah.
Yeah. Something happened at that meal. Oh. He got up. As they walked out, he leaned over and says, I'm going to destroy you tomorrow. You just don't say that to me. I was ready to have that debate right there. I was all ready for it. And the place was packed out, jammed with people. But the best thing in debate is love your opponent while you destroy him.
Hmm.
Everybody there knew I loved him, but they also knew I destroyed him
Hmm.
intellectually. Yeah.
Hmm.
It was quite easy. He was basically I think he'd been trained by the Jehovah Witness, and I did my dissertation on that, my master's, and so I was prepared for it.
What encouragement would you give to young leaders, whether pastors or aspiring apologists or writers or influencers?
Never, ever stop learning. Read, study, listen, evaluate. To me, the moment you stop learning, you've lost it. Because I don't care who you are, I don't care how smart you are, there's someone out there a little smarter than you. And God will bring them by your path. And I just wanted to be ready for them. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. I think I said one more question about 20 questions ago, so we'll wrap this thing up. But this is fun. Super proud of you.
I thought you were going to say there's one more question.
No. I could keep going, but anything I should have asked you?
Geez, you pretty well covered the whole thing.
All right, this is legit the last one. What's your favorite book in the Bible? Do you have a favorite book and why?
Probably the book of Romans. I don't know why God gave us anything but the book of Romans and maybe the Gospel of John. Just about everything you have to know except for the physical resurrection is in the book of Romans. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I love that verse about not being ashamed.
For I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it's the power of God unto salvation to anyone who believes.
Amen. Thanks for coming on, Dad.
Hey, I needed the money.
Always fun. All right.